what we do is we are the managers, the stewards, the people who disperse and manage the Historic Preservation Fund, which is an account that Congress deposits $150 million a year and then annually also appropriates out an amount of their choosing for grant programs. The grant programs y'all are probably most familiar with are the annual grants, the non-competitive grants to the state historic preservation offices and the tribal historic preservation offices, which is also the grant program that mandates a pass-through of funding to certified local governments. And indeed, considering today, I don't think I need to define to you guys what a certified local government is, but also I will point out that on our website, we have a couple additional resources in terms of, being able to engage with who else is a CLG. And particularly this program we have here highlights where CLGs are, where national parks are, where public lands are. It even uses National Register data. That way you can even use it to identify some of the other partners and partnerships that are available to you. We also have another grant program that doesn't currently have an opportunity. The Emergency Supplemental Historic Preservation Fund is occasionally appropriated by Congress to assist disaster-affected states and tribes of a presidentially declared disaster. This is a grant program that depends on congressional appropriation more intermittently, but it's one that I think you guys should be very available of its opportunity, even if I deeply, deeply hope you guys never need this grant program. Really, I'm going to focus much of my time today on our competitive grant programs. These are grants that you can directly apply for to perform a project. We've got 8 of these grant programs at the moment that actually have 10 different opportunities. The vast majority of these grant programs are for preservation projects. That is to do a project that directly, physically preserves a historic resource. We also have what we sometimes call history type project grant programs. These are to do a broader range of non-physical projects, survey, nomination to the National Register, also as well other forms of documentation like Hatzer-Howell's drawings, even documentation of stories via like oral histories, even interpret education, oftentimes through museum exhibits. Also, conservation of museum collections or processing and digitizing archival collections. These are available through these 4 grant programs. But in general, we've got a variety of requirements that apply to all, with very limited exception, those grant programs. Generally speaking, what we use to define a historic resource, especially to directly physically preserve, is the National Register, either it being listed in the National Register or eligible for listing in the National Register. If you have something that's eligible for listing in the National Register, then generally speaking, it has to become listed by the end of the grant project. Also, again, what we really use to define what is direct physical preservation of a historic resource is the Secretary of the Interior standards. If the work does not meet the Secretary of the Interior standards, then generally speaking, it doesn't meet the definition of direct physical work to a historic resource for a grant programs. Also, we have the statutory and regulatory requirements of Section 106, Section 110, and NEPA. What I really want to highlight for those with regards to y'all is that as preservation practitioners and stewards yourselves, that our grant programs have these requirements, and we have not been empowered to delegate Section 106 and 110 to y'all for these programs. So with these programs, even if you have experience in relationships with your state historic preservation office here, our grant programs, the review and the initiation of consultation with the State Historic Preservation Office still has to be my office presently. So don't get gung-ho and do that yourselves. It'll be a waste of your effort, unfortunately. Then we also require a project sign and press release. These are to inform the public that federal funding is occurring in their backyard, and gives them that opportunity to engage with you and provide questions, comments, or seek questions. Oftentimes our grant projects have actually been improved, or indeed sometimes the documentation that you need to be able to articulate and advocate for the results that you're seeking to achieve sometimes comes from just randomly the public saying, hey, this is great. Here's a photo of my family at the site that gives you the documentation you need to prove for the roof work that you intend to do. So that's another reason that it's highly to your benefit to fully engage with that process. Then also you do have to communicate about your grant to us through semi-annual reporting and a detailed final report. And then also our grants that result in direct physical assistance to a historic property do have to have an easement placed on the property. A time-limited easement is fine. The duration is set by the amount of funding that it receives. Perpetual can knock out this requirement in perpetuity. But the key is that for funding a resource, we need to protect the federal investment, that if we spend $300,000 on a new roof to a historic resource, that resource is not demolished in 5 years. I'm going to belabor here the Secretary of the Interior standards and guidelines, because truly understanding your preservation project is the key to successfully applying for a preservation project. That you know the historical significance of the resource that you want to preserve, and that you understand how to actually preserve that resource, rather than just doing work to an old building. Is if you couch it as that, it's not going to be as competitive as the applications that truly understand what is their historic resource and how their project preserves it. We have on our website, which is the Integrated Resource Management Applications, usually referred to as IRMA. We love putting up there the products that our grant programs have achieved, which is a good way for being able to explore what else have other people done, for being able to inspire yourself, and also what else have other people done in terms of being able to identify what could you do. As you guys had a grant writing session yesterday, I'm not going to spend terribly long on how to write an application for my grant programs. These slides will be available for you afterwards, so I'm going to mostly move quickly past them, but I'm going to highlight that, again, our applications have 4 criteria that you're responding to, where the significance is really identifying what's the historic resource and why is it historically significant? What's the need, threat, urgency? Why does that resource need preservation assistance? What is that preservation assistance going to do? Feasibility. why are you the best steward both for this resource and for this project to actually see this resource preserved? And sustainability. Obviously, this resource has reached a need that it needs grant assistance. How in the future, after this grant program, is it not going to need that assistance again? This slide particularly deals with the fact that our grant programs have a timeline. There's time when a specific period of time in which they're open and available for application. There's a period of time in which after they've been applied to that we make our selection. And then even after you've been selected and your grant has been awarded, that there's still again time where you need to submit the plans and specifications, and for those specifications to be reviewed and approved by my office, which means that if you're thinking about applying to our grant programs, be very cognizant of when each action needs to occur, and also that, yep, there is a series of actions that need to occur, which generally speaking means that our grant programs are not good for emergency, immediate funding needs. If there is something that is falling down today, it's probably not a great and competitive grant for this application for these programs, because by the time we can actually start touching that building, there's a significant chance it has fallen down. If there's something that's in the midst of a demolition permit, that's again something that might not be very competitive for these grant programs, because that will need a significant demolition stay of 6 months to a year before the work to preserve it can necessarily occur. So be cognizant that our grants are for preserving sites, but if you have something that is desperate and needs funding now, be aware that our funding might not be able to make the impact in time. We've also got a number of recommendations. Again, you'll get the slides, so I'm not going to spend any significant time on these. I'm going to call out photos here as one of that, making sure you have photos that put the historic significance of the property in context, but also that document the work that you need to do. That a photo from far away that really shows the whole property, the architecture, and why it's significant is oftentimes not a good photo for demonstrating that the roof is leaking and needs assistance. That you need the photo from far away for I as a reviewer to understand the property, but a photo of close up documenting that the roof is leaking. Okay, our grant programs. I'm going to run through these real quick and really just tell you guys right here, right now, that the best thing you can do is if there's any resource you're considering a grant for, contact us, email us, let us know exactly what that resource is and what its historical significance is that you think it has or that it does have documented at the moment. And we will flat out tell you whether or not the program that you're thinking of applying to is if it's eligible for, or if there is a grant program that we have that it is eligible for. And we will let you know. Okay, but underrepresented communities. This grant program is our narrowest grant program and for what it can do. It is purely for surveying and nominating things to the National Register of Historic Places. The entire purpose of this grant program is diversifying, broadening the National Register of Historic Places. That means that underrepresented is defined as underrepresented in the National Register. And beyond that, we don't define what is underrepresented. So it's entirely upon you to make an argument that the resource that you are looking to survey and nominate to the National Register is underrepresented. This is a grant program that is well funded, but for which the funding for per project is actually relatively small, since it's just to do survey and nomination, which means this is a grant program, especially for USCLGs, is really well worth your time applying for. We also have African American Civil Rights. This is our biggest grant program that has the broadest opportunities. It is for the full range of what we allow to be done, both direct preservation of sites as well as documentation, interpretation, and for oral histories, museum exhibits, conservation of collections, anything to do with preserving African American civil rights history. It is very well funded, which means that, again, your time applying to this is well worth it. We also have History of Equal Rights, which is a grant program that is only for direct physical preservation of historic resources. But it's for resources that have direct significance to the struggle of anyone for equal rights in America. This is, again, something where we very specifically do not define what are the eligible rights and what are the eligible communities and people. So it's entirely incumbent on you to identify who was denied a right, what that right was, and how the site is directly significant to that struggle for those rights. And again, also as well, it doesn't have to be successful. It can be very much a story of labor rights that continued to be denied even after a struggle at this site. We also have historically Black colleges and universities, which the only eligible entities to apply for these are HBCUs, but yep, you guys as CLGs often have HBCUs in your communities. And so if there's an HBC in your community that has buildings that need preservation, this is a great program to highlight for them, assist them in applying for, or very specifically, fully partnering with them on. Similarly, tribal heritage grants are only available for tribes and tribal organizations for being able to document and preserve tribal history and culture. But very much you guys as CLGs, tribal history happened in your communities. And be you having a tribe there present now or very specifically not, this is very much a program that you can still talk with tribes about and partner with in terms of doing this tribal history documentation and preservation in your community. Save America's Treasures. I very much do not have the time to talk with you about all the requirements and limitations of this grant program. And it's very much one that I'm going to highlight as if you have a resource that you think you want to preserve, contact us and we will absolutely let you know whether or not Save America's Treasures, you are eligible for it. Same goes for Semi-Quincentennial, which is for sites that commemorate the founding of the nation, either by directly being involved in the founding of the nation or for being a monument to the founding of the nation, but only for things that were constructed before 1800. So very, very, very much, again, this is one that just let us know what you're considering, and we will absolutely tell you whether or not this is a program it's eligible for. Then our big and really, really powerful program, Paul Brune Historic Revitalization Grants, which is a sub-grant program. It's a complicated program because it is only available to rural communities to which there's a very specific definition of rural that you have to comply with. And then also as well that it's for creating and managing a competitive sub-grant program. This is the program that we have put out the most documentation and information of. So I highly recommend you really engage with everything we've put out there for being able to understand if your community and your intent is eligible. But this is an incredibly powerful program for being able to do direct physical preservation work in your community. So it's one that I highly recommend, especially getting to speak to you guys in West Virginia, since practically everybody is eligible for this grant program in West Virginia. The key factor being it's a very powerful preservation program, which means it is a competitive preservation program. So make sure, again, you engage with all the documentation we have and really, really think through and develop your sub-grant program, competitive sub-grant program before applying to us. But I highly recommend this program to you guys. We also, even in the National Park Service, have more grant programs than I have time to talk to you about today than just the Historic Preservation Fund. We've got the American Battlefield Protection Program, Japanese American Confinement Science, Maritime Heritage Program, and National NAGPRA Program. All of these are also, again, programs that even if you don't directly have a resource such as a Japanese American confinement site in your community, you might still have history that intersects in your community with these programs. So there's still opportunities to partner. But the key factor to really leave you guys with is, contact us, talk with us, seek out information from us. And we are so eager to share absolutely as much information as we can with you guys. So let us know what you're interested in. We're happy to have more webinars in your community, to your community. We love talking about ourselves. I can blather for hours about these things. So, contact us. And then I'm going to finally, after running over, turn things over to my other partners for the rest of the session. Thank you much, people.
Thank you, James. Wonderful, as always. And he's not wrong. In West Virginia, we are all under 50,000 people. So there's really nowhere that you can't, I think, apply for a Paul Brunn grant. So, and our state has received a few in the past. So always good to keep at it. So I think we're going to turn things over to Jennifer Brennan, who you may recognize as formerly being in my position for a while as CLG coordinator and tax credit coordinator. But now Jennifer is with Main Street and is the on-track coordinator for the state. So we're going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you. Are you good, Claire? Is my presentation coming up? There we go. So my name is Jennifer Brennan. I am the Main Street and on-track coordinator for the state. We are part of Main Street America. We are the state coordinating program for Main Street America and work closely with that organization. And what I'm going to talk about, I think probably most of you are familiar with the name Main Street, but you might not really know what the expectations are of being a Main Street. And so I just kind of wanted to talk about that a little bit before I went too far into the funding options that we have available. Main Streets are actually independent 501c3 nonprofit organizations. They are completely independent. We have 2 in the state that have a kind of lap over with their city government, but for the most part, they are independent 501c3s that do receive city support. They are, Main Streets are required to have either a full or part-time manager, and that is based on your population. 5,000 people and under is part-time, and anything over 5,000 is going to be full-time. We have every Main Street has a board of director and executive committee, and we also work within the 4 points of Main Street, which is kind of our guiding principles on the work that we do. So each Main Street has a set of committee members who fall into those different committees or different 4 points. And the 4 points, just to touch on them, is organization, design, economic vitality, and promotion, which is marketing and events. Before you become a Main Street in West Virginia, you do have to be an On Track for 2 years. On Track is our startup program, and that allows you to receive your 501c3 designation. It does take time, so it gives you some time to get that organized. It allows you to start fundraising and gain sponsors, and it is basically 2 years of intensive training related to Main Street. We just took on our new On Tracks. We have 3 new On Tracks who kicked off on Monday, so they were super excited. They are Moundsville, Ravenswood, and Weston. So they are starting their 2 years in On Track with the goal of eventually rolling over to become a Main Street. Certified local government designation is very important for our office. All Main Streets except for one, we have 10 Main Streets in the state. They are all certified local governments. The majority of our On Tracks are also certified local governments. It's one of the things that our office feels is very important because you can kind of work together. You are working towards a common goal when you're a Main Street and an HLC, so it kind of makes sense to layer those programs together, and then you can kind of utilize that funding for some of the other CLG and Main Street funding can be utilized together. So let's see. So in Main Street, our focus is what makes you unique. What makes your community stand out from all the other communities. And I hear a lot of times, well, I want to be like so-and-so, and I want to be like so-and-so. And really, you need to kind of take a step back and take some time and figure out what is special about your community, and that's what we're going to focus on. So in the slide, I have the mural for the Feast of the Seven Fishes in Fairmont. That's obviously a big fundraiser for them in December, and kind of a lot of the work that they do is revolves around the Feast of the Seven Fishes event. And then we also have Be Kind November in Charlestown. So every November, the entire town of Charlestown focuses on kindness and, how to support each other, and just kind of be nicer all around to everybody. So it's, I questioned some of their activities and events in November, but actually they were really fun. They have, people holding signs on street corners saying like, be nice today. And, just kind of makes you kind of take a step back and think about it. So what makes you unique? What makes you different from everybody else? Because everybody has their own special flavor, and that's what we want to focus on. We don't want to be like the community in the next county over. So as you can see, this is really hard to see. It's super small, but it's also on our website, so you can go and take a look at that. Our website is West Virginia CAD. And this is basically a list of all of the Main Streets and On Tracks. We have Main Streets and On Tracks throughout the entire state. Definitely heavy in the Morgantown area, Morgantown, Fairmont, Mannington, trying to get some more folks in the southern part of the state. So if you are kind of in that area, we would love to talk to you. We have Roncevert currently in the southern part of the state, and Huntington. So definitely looking to expand our reach into more of the southern part of the state. So so everybody kind of sees the impact that Main Street has, every year we are required by Main Street America to submit numbers, economic impact numbers. And so these are 10 Main Streets from the impact of 10 Main Streets in 2022. So we had $10 million of private investment, $4 million of public investment, 571 building rehabilitations, and that can be from anything from a very large scale rehab project that might be a tax credit or a grant project, all the way down to a small kind of repainting of the facade. Basically anything that you have to have a permit for would fall under that building rehabilitations. But I think it's really great to see the volunteer hours that we have. We do track our volunteer hours. And I would say most of our Main Street directors tend to go low on their volunteer hours, but almost 10,000 volunteer hours in the state for last year. And obviously during COVID in 20 and 21, it was really low because we just weren't able to have any of our events and activities, but that number is starting to grow back up. And this year I'm expecting it to be well over 10,000 volunteer hours. So we're out there, we're doing a lot within the community. And some of the conversations I'm having right now is we're doing a lot, but maybe people don't know that it's us. So we are out there and we're doing a lot of work, and just kind of wanted to throw that out there for you guys. So if you are a Main Street, talk to your director because they are working hard. You can go to the next slide. So we have several benefits being part of Main Street. Being part of the larger Main Street America network is one of the biggest benefits that we have. But when you become a Main Street, you receive heavy support from our office, from the Main Street, West Virginia Main Street office. Every year, just to kind of run through them super quick, we do a community assessment. I'm actually in the middle of one today. I am doing a community assessment. I just took a break from meetings, so I'll be in meetings for the rest of the day. Just going over, it's basically an organizational review to talk about the work that everybody is doing, what you're doing well, what might need to be improved upon, from the community's perspective. So not from my perspective, but really kind of, how can we improve what is working for your city or for your town, and what can we just do a quick tweak to make it a little bit better. We also offer Main Street directors training on a monthly basis. We do board training every November. We've done economic structuring, so how to create a budget that works and to be a sustainable nonprofit. All Main Streets are required to create a work plan, and so we have yearly training on how to create a work plan that actually functions. We do historic rehab tax credit training, thanks to Meredith. She always steps up and does trainings for us. We also offer scholarships. We have really great conferences around the country that we participate in. Main Street Now is coming up in May, and we'll be sending, I think, about 10 people to Birmingham, Alabama for that. We also send our Main Street directors to other conferences and trainings that they need to help their larger communities. So we have sent Main Street directors to the National Alliance of Preservation Commission, an economic development training in Ohio. Really, if the Main Street director or board member can justify the training, I am willing to provide a scholarship for them to attend. You just have to be able to connect it back to the work that you're doing on Main Street and downtown redevelopment. And as long as you can do that, I'm willing to support your attendance at that conference. So I am open to whatever is out there. One of our the way that I think about our funding structure is that we have two kind of large pots of money. The first pot is our design services. We have a contract with, I'm sure most of you know, Mike Giolis. He's been around, so he does a lot of work for us. He will come out and do individual design visits as requested by the property owner or business owner. And the work that Mike can do is varied. So the way that I look at Mike's work is it focuses on a single building or a single project. So it might be a pocket park, a gateway project. Right now, he's getting ready to work on how to redesign a parking lot to make it function more. It's a little bit dangerous trying to kind of get in and out of the parking lot. So trying to redesign the parking lot to make it function a little bit better. He can also help with policy activities. He has worked on a historic preservation ordinance for one of our main streets. He reviews sign ordinances on a regular basis. All of this, keep in mind that he is also working, if it's a historic preservation ordinance, he will be talking to SHPO. If it's a sign ordinance, he will be, he meets all of the requirements to do this work as it relates to SHPO. So he's in constant communication with their office. So it's not as though he's making recommendations without the knowledge of SHPO. He does also design and assistance for individual buildings, facade design, commercial space layout. He can do pretty much anything in an individual building. But it's important to keep in mind that all of Mike's work must comply with the Secretary of the Interior standards. So if there is a project that he's working on and the property owner has something that falls outside of the scope of the standards, Mike will not be able to do that. So all of his work, everything that he presents to the property owner must meet the standards. It's a requirement that we have a contract that we have entered into with the State Historic Preservation Office. So, and I included a couple of Mike's some design, just so you can kind of see some of the work that he can do. This is a project that he did in Sutton a few years ago. The building had a catastrophic fire and destroyed the entire interior of the building, but the street facade was salvaged. They got there in time to keep it from collapsing. And so he has worked with Sutton to kind of come up with a design plan for the use of these buildings. You can go to the next slide, and it shows kind of some of his ideas. They use it, I'm pretty sure this is where they would like to have their farmers market, but kind of this just gives you an idea of what you would be presented with if you were to contract with Mike. He goes in and does architectural designs and, can come up with different ideas to meet the needs of the community. The really good thing is that since Mike has been in West Virginia for so long, has been working in West Virginia for so long, he really does know the majority of the communities and kind of knows the needs for those communities, and will definitely kind of communicate that and give his thoughts and his ideas, but at the same time, listen to what the community is wanting. So he's very good at being flexible and kind of, making changes to the plans as the community sees fit. This is not exciting picture-wise, but Mike did the analysis for the Huntington Historic District. We work in the west end of Huntington, in what's called Central City Historic District, and Mike did the historic district analysis to determine whether or not there was enough integrity left to create a National Register district, and that's a few years old, but I think it's in the process of wrapping up. So that is also one of the projects that Mike can work on, going in and helping with National Register work. So some other services that we offer to the communities. This is our other pot of money that I reference. It's technical assistance funding. So while Mike's funding focuses specifically on individual projects and individual buildings, the technical assistance funding offers a larger, focuses more on a community event or a community project. So it's a larger impact that the technical assistance funding would have. It could be a parking study. We've done business improvement district studies for Huntington. We've done market studies for all of our main streets. In Wheeling, they had a study to determine how to create a dog-friendly downtown. So a lot of the businesses or a lot of the property owners in Wheeling are pet families. And so they want to make sure that those, the businesses cater to those people who want to bring their dogs out and have lunch. So what do I need to do to turn my business into a more pet-friendly environment? So really, technical assistance kind of is across the board. I can generally make most projects work. The only thing to keep in mind is that we cannot pay for construction and we cannot pay for engineering reports. The majority of the funding that we have, not the majority, the funding that we have only allows for planning studies. With that being said, if you have a project that maybe is just outside of the scope of what we're allowed, we can maybe massage it to bring it back into the scope of what we're allowed, or we can pay for a portion of the project that does cover planning, and then you can look for funding for the other portions that we wouldn't be able to cover elsewhere. So I'm definitely open to communicating and trying to make the project work as much as possible. So some examples of some projects that we did in Morgantown, they did a downtown district exploration of Lower High Street with the connection over to the Wharf District. The Wharf District is actually part of their Main Street district, but it's a little disconnected. So they are trying to figure out how to kind of overcome that disconnection and get that section of High Street and the Wharf District a little bit more invigorated. We have also done, as I've mentioned, we did market studies. This is a snapshot for a market study to tell you exactly what communities, what types of businesses would be welcome in your community. We have a consultant who comes in and spends probably about 2 days in each community to discuss, to meet with property owners, to meet with community members. And he goes back and kind of looks to see exactly what businesses would do well in your community. We also provide all of the Main Street managers, I think with the exception of one, has a membership with Maestro. And Maestro, basically, when we were looking at those numbers that have to be submitted, instead of doing it just on like an Excel spreadsheet, Maestro allows it all to be computer generated, and it just kind of flows to me and my account. So it's just kind of a way to make the Main Street manager's job easier. And that's kind of really the overall goal of our technical assistance funding, is how can we help the Main Street directors in their efforts in their local communities? And that kind of looks different depending on what they're working on. So I think that is it. If you have any questions, if you are not sure if you're a Main Street or an on-track community, please feel free to reach out. And if you are a Main Street, I would definitely recommend reaching out to your Main Street director. Meredith and I have had a lot of conversations about stronger connections between Main Streets and historic landmark commissions. That is definitely something you guys are doing the same work. And so it might look a little bit different, but your goals are the same. And so how can we kind of create that relationship? And we'd be happy to kind of facilitate that as much as possible.
Good deal. Thanks so much, Jennifer. Yeah, you're right. We're doing the same work here, so we might as well kind of jump on together. All right, so I think next we're going to hear from Ben Duvall-Irwin, who is with the Appalachian Forest National Heritage Area. So Ben, if you want to go ahead and take it away.
Thank you. So we're getting set up here. I'm Ben. I'm Communications Manager with Appalachian Forest National Heritage Area. We like to call it AFNHA for short, but like James was saying, it's still kind of an unwieldy acronym. I'm going to tell you about our new grant program. But first, I'd just like to give you a brief introduction to National Heritage Areas in our organization. We are one of 62 national heritage areas in the United States. It's a program of the National Park Service. Each national heritage area is funded by the National Park Service, but each one is managed by an individual organization, what they call the coordinating entity. So like the different Main Street programs, we're all managed by independent nonprofits or government agencies. In our case, we're a nonprofit. It's been around for about 20 years, but it's only been since 2019 that we were designated as a national heritage area. And our organization, our mission is to conserve, interpret, and promote forest heritage to enhance landscapes and benefit communities in West Virginia and Maryland. And we work in 18 counties, 16 in West Virginia and the 2 westernmost counties in Maryland. And I'd like to show you this because our grants program, like most of our other programs, are exclusive to our 18 counties. We include pretty much everybody in and around the Mon Forest area. If you're familiar with the tourism regions that the Department of Tourism uses, that includes the Potomac Highlands plus a couple of counties around that. I checked the SHPO website for the CLGs and HLCs in our area. It looks like we've got some groups in Greenbrier, Randolph, Upshur, Hampshire, Hardy, Nicholas, Barber, and Tucker counties. And I'm sure many of y'all are involved in more than one organization in your community. So our grant program may be relevant for some other organizations in your area. And for those of you outside of these counties, I believe that Wheeling National Heritage Area and the Cole National Heritage Area in the southern part of the state also have their own grant programs. And so now to get to the specifics for our program, this is the second year we've done it, and this is in general to fund new projects related to preservation, interpretation, tourism development, or partnership development, with a big focus on any new or enhanced activity or project outside of what your organization is already doing. Not, for example, some festival or something that you've been doing for several years. If that's the kind of thing you want to support, then we're looking for some new aspects to that. Some of the preservation part of it could be, physical, historic preservation of a building, could also be preservation related to collections or archives, or just cultural documentation in general. It could include repairs to a historic building or asset, but not any new construction. Some of the preservation projects that we funded in our current round was a roof repair on a historic structure, as well as documentation of cemeteries and grave sites. The interpretation projects could be historic or natural or cultural interpretation. We had several interpretive signs that will be installed. We even had a coloring book about native species, and we even had 2 different original theatrical productions that are going to be based on local history. The tourism development projects could be a new product or training for your tourism organizations. This round, we funded a new website for a community and new brochures for an organization. One of our partnership development projects this year was training for staff at some community organizations So it can be pretty broad within those 4 categories, and if it relates to our general mission of conservation, heritage, and tourism. And we had a question ahead of time if LiDAR training would be eligible, and it would be. And in fact, in this round of grants, we did fund a project that was documenting or trying to identify African American cemeteries in their community, and the bulk of their application was to pay for a LiDAR operator. So that would certainly be eligible, or training to learn how to operate that kind of thing would also be eligible. And these grants are open to any nonprofit or government agency. The applications should be for a minimum of $1,000 up to a $20,000 ask. That it is a matching grant, so your application would need an equal value of cash match or in-kind match, and that match could include staff time or volunteer time spent on the particular project. That could count as in-kind match. We have a total of $200,000 that we'll be distributing for each grant period. We're planning on doing it every year. Now, last year we had about twice as many funds requested as we were able to award, so it was pretty competitive last year. We'll see how that turns out this year, but we're planning on doing it every year. We did allow applicants to submit more than one application. That is allowed. In that case, we only funded one application per applicant. The key for our successful applications was to show a clear outcome or benefit to a defined community or audience. The application period will be open this summer, hopefully this spring in mid to late April, probably in May, and then the applications will be due in July, and then the awards would be made in October, and the project period can be for up to 2 years from that October. Here's in the previous slide, this was one of our current grantees. This is a lecture series going on at the Kump Education Center here in Elkins. On the left here, we have the museum at Fort Warwick, which is doing an archaeological survey later this year. And here on the right, this is a picture of some artists who did some original artwork for the new Tigert Hotel, which just opened in Elkins. They put in brand new artwork related to local history. And here's our contact information. If you have any questions about the guidelines or eligibility, we have some information on our website. If you go to our programs tab and look for subgrants, we have all of our guidelines and info from last year's program. That those requirements will likely be the same or very similar this year. And if you have any specific questions, you can email us at grants@afnha.org. And we will probably host some kind of webinar to take questions or go over frequently asked questions and things like that. So you can check our website or sign up for our newsletter if you want to keep track of these dates. And that's all I've got so far. I'll be happy to answer any questions afterwards if you have any.
Good deal. Thanks so much, Ben.
Thank you.
It's a great program. I was an AFNHA AmeriCorps member for a number of years with Ben and Claire and a number of folks. Jamie. Well, Jamie was PAWB. Yeah, sorry. Great program. So speaking of Jamie, I think we're going to turn it over to her. And Jamie's with the Preservation Alliance of West Virginia, of course, here in West Virginia. So Jamie, when you're ready, take it away.
Hey, I think everyone can see my slides. Perfect. So, like Meredith mentioned, I'm with the Preservation Alliance of West Virginia. We're a statewide nonprofit dedicated to historic preservation and advocacy for museums and heritage tourism across the state. So, here's our contact information. I just wanted to start that, and I will be giving this slide to Claire as well to distribute. So you guys can all have that. It's also on our website. As far as our programs, much like AFNHA, we house an AmeriCorps program. Unlike AFNHA, ours is statewide, whereas theirs is contained to their heritage area. So anyone in the state with a qualified organization can apply for a member. Those would be organizations like museums, archives, HLZs, and schools, stuff like that. And I did want to mention that right now our AmeriCorps site applications are open. So if that was something you would be interested in, those applications can be found on our website. So I think...
Oh, real quick, Jamie, how many or which HLCs have AmeriCorps members right now or have in the past?
So I served with the Weston Historic Landmarks Commission. I know Jefferson County HLC often has an AmeriCorps member. I want to say Morgantown has in the past, but that would have been before I started. Wheeling's HLC often, doesn't have a member itself, but is worked with via the member with Wheeling Heritage.
I think Elkins had one when I was there.
Yeah, Elkins does sometimes. Those are all the ones I'm
a
aware
member
of.
with Elkins HLC in the past.
Mhm.
Oh, that's right. That's AFNHA. That's right.
Yeah, we had talked recently about PAWV housing an Elkins HLC member, but I think just given the location, it made more sense for AFNHA to have it. But yeah, we will help out with HLCs, museums, archives. Often school libraries are eligible, organizations like that. So if you have any questions about the AmeriCorps program, you can shoot me or Danielle an email and we can assist you with that and get you the application. It's a super easy application. It's just a Google form. It's one page. And if you did have any questions, you could ask. PAWV has also been the recipient of 2 Paul Brune grants that, James mentioned that grant program earlier. Unfortunately, given the timing of this presentation, our applications closed on the 1st for our most recent Paul Brune grant, which was for historic schools. But I will say if for some reason all the grant money is not distributed via this round of applications, there will be a follow-up application. I would expect to see that in somewhere between 6 months to a year, depending on how much we are able to fund. So if you have any questions about that, we would love to chat with you. We also have our contractors list on our website, which is, I've heard from people, very helpful to find people who are, masonry experts, consultants in the, National Register form, stuff like that. We have a long, extensive list that's on our website that you're more than welcome to peruse. And if you have any particular questions, you could give us a call and we could figure out who might fit best for your project. We also have our annual awards banquet that I wanted to mention, given everyone in the room. We are currently taking applications for awards that can also be found on our website. And those things range from Craftsperson of the Year, AmeriCorps member, most significant save, stuff like that. We also like to highlight at our awards banquet. We also have our own programming that we do, such as hands-on workshops. We have in the past done Windows workshops at a variety of places like Arthurdale, Old Hemlock Foundation in Preston County, Priggett's Fort, places like that. If you have a need for a hands-on preservation project, we could also talk about coordinating that for your site. We've done windows, masonry, log cabins, a variety of topics. So if you have any in particular you were thinking of, we could discuss that. We're currently working on a series of workshops that'll be centered around the Collett House in Beverly, West Virginia. So if you are local to the area, I'll send you the schedule of what we plan on covering, but the gist of it is it'll be a mixture of hands-on projects and a little bit more theoretical projects. So things like masonry is our big hands-on project, doing the chimney. But then also we'll be doing some smaller window repairs, epoxy wood repairs, and then talking about maintenance plans, fixing National Register nominations, like updating them if that's the case that your building would need that. We want to talk about that, how that process looks, and also some kind of softer things like historic landscaping, other things we want to keep appropriate for the building. So we're planning to cover a wide variety of topics. Hopefully one of them you'll be interested in. We also have online resources for preservation. We're currently working on a series for textile care and preservation. That'll be, I guess a little bit more useful for museum folks than people looking to fix buildings. But we want to cover historic quilts, historic woven textiles, and historic clothing, and how we can better treat those in the museum setting. So, or in your personal setting. I think the skills are fairly applicable either way. If you're interested in any of those, they'll be up on our website when we have the official dates announced. So in terms of other programming we do, we are also working on creating some programming for the sesquicentennial. I maybe said that wrong, but America 250 to say it easier. We are looking to document sites of enslavement across the state. Some others in the call have been helping us out with that. So if you have any sites that fit that description in your community, we would love to hear about that and work with you on documenting those and making sure that those stories are told. So that's the gist of all the information I had. I didn't really want to bog anyone down too much. So, but yeah, I think when we take questions, if anyone has any for me, I would love to talk with you more about your projects.
Good deal. Thank you, Jamie.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you all of our panelists. Really great presentations, really helpful. So wanted to open up the floor for any questions about any of those programs. I know some might not be, exactly within your region, but I think they're all helpful to know about and share with other folks in the field. Well, I did have one question. So, and you all have kind of touched on this a bit, but how do you know what kind of funding source is the best suited for your project?
That is a very great question. And first I'll highlight that, even just finding funding sources can be difficult, let alone for your project. So I will particularly put out there grants.gov is something that's very important to become familiar with if you're seeking any federal funding, because that's where every federal funding opportunity exists. Then websites are a great way to find more information about what grant programs might be coming and what the requirements of those grant programs are. And that the only thing I'm going to really, really emphasize is be honest with your project and the grant programs you're seeking from. That it's painfully clear when you're trying to jam a square peg into the round hole of the grant program, and that really does you no favors. So yeah, make sure to truly match your project to the funding opportunity, but there are a lot of ways that what you want to do could be different in a way that does make it actually a viable project. So sometimes get inspired by the funding opportunities less than by what specifically you have.
I should just plug, because I didn't, but it's also your office as well. So West Virginia State Government actually has a similar website that centralizes all the grants that are available through the state. So definitely take a look at that. It might not be, there's a lot of funding available through the state, so it might take some time, but they have been working on getting that that website up and running. So if there is, a specific grant that you might be looking for, there is a website available through the state as well.
And I think that is, interestingly, grants.wv.gov. So not too far off from grants.gov.
And I'll also just plug that, as you may or may not have caught through these presentations, is that a lot of our individual entities and grant programs can lead into each other. So the opportunities at Main Street and can be fantastic ways to first get a project designed or get the marketing to actually be able to sell to my office that you have both a preservation project and you actually have a plan for what to do with the historic resource afterwards. And then, Preservation Alliance can also be a fantastic way to actually see the project done. And all of these people who are with me here today are just flatly great partners for even just being able to bounce ideas off of and talk through a project, who also can point you to other grant programs, even if not their own opportunities. So.
Yeah, and I just wanted to bounce off of something James said. It is so important, if you find a grant that's just really good for you, or is a really, low match, something that works well for your org, but it's not a topic you were imagining, making something fit. It's not as hard as you think. We just closed applications for our Fund for Historic Schools grant, and I'm sure we got some applications that were people who didn't initially think that they would be working on a school building this year, or highlighting that building as part of their historic downtown even. But we bring up the topic schools, and every community in West Virginia has a school building that needs some help, a historic building that they forget is historic, I think, in many cases. But we see more of these buildings being rehabbed in beautiful ways. And I think one good example is the old First Word School here in Elkins that's apartments now. And they can be used in some really amazing, beneficial ways for a community.
Yeah, First Word is a great example. It used a ton of different funding sources. I know tax credits and, outside state funding, all kinds of things. And now it's, I think it's senior housing. So, and it's just a beautifully preserved building in Elkins. So great example. Yeah. Good deal. Any other questions?
I have a question for James on the topic of these different funding sources. We're working with a organization called Access on the Go, who is trying to promote resources available for businesses related to accessibility and ADA compliance. So I was wondering if any of your grants are appropriate for accessibility improvements or ADA compliance.
Yes, very much so. Accessibility is, generally speaking, always an allowable activity as part of any of our direct preservation grants, because we very much acknowledge that a key part of making preserving a historic resource is continuing to use the historic resource, which means making it accessible. So that is always, yep, an allowable activity. The two things are that our grant programs are still only available to historic resources, those being listed in or eligible for the National Register, and that we do still have to meet the Secretary of the Interior standards and guidelines. So yes, it does need to be a historic building, and that the work, how we do accessibility might still be under, discussion or question. But yes, very much so.
Thank you.
Great question. Which is, I'll also emphasize that not just accessibility, but security. So we acknowledge as being another thing that is not necessarily as much direct physical preservation as repairing the roof, but is critical to actually seeing that historic resource preserved going forward. So that's another common additional, maybe not the first thing we think about with preservation, but an allowable activity. So
Good deal. Well, if we don't have any more questions, we will include, everybody's emails, contact information. So if you do have questions, I'm sure anyone here would be happy to answer those questions for you and have more discussions. Are you a Main Street or, town in your town, or, would this grant work for me? So thank you again to our panelists. Wonderful. Thank you so much. And always good to see all of you. So